I am Janine, 34 years old, a marketing specialist with 10 years of experience. Never did I imagine opening an email that would say, "We are doing you a favor." As HR explained my sudden termination, the shock paralyzed me for a moment before clarity struck. They had no idea what was coming their way. Sometimes the most satisfying victories come from simply knowing your worth and standing your ground. Before I dive into this story, let me know where you are watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe if you have ever felt undervalued at work. When I joined Techvision 3 years ago, my heart was brimming with hope and anticipation. The company had been making waves in the software industry, with innovative products that genuinely improved workflow efficiency for small businesses. I still remember my interview day vividly. The office was housed in a renovated industrial building with exposed brick walls, modern furniture, and motivational quotes tastefully displayed throughout the open workspace. CEO Robert Taylor, a charismatic man in his early 40s with salt and pepper hair and an infectious enthusiasm, walked me through the office personally. "At Techvision, we believe in transparency and work-life balance," he explained, stopping to introduce me to various team members who all seemed genuinely happy to be there. "We work hard, but we respect personal time. No emails after 6 p.m. or on weekends unless there is a genuine emergency." The CFO, Michael Peterson, joined us for the final interview. He was more reserved than Robert, but seemed equally committed to the company vision. "We are looking for people who can grow with us," he said. "Your marketing experience is impressive, and we think you would be perfect to lead the campaign for our newest product suite." I was offered the job the next day with a salary that exceeded my expectations and a benefits package that included stock options. It was a significant step up from my previous position at a more traditional marketing firm where I had felt increasingly stagnant. The choice seemed obvious, but it still took courage to leave the security of my established role for this new opportunity. My first few months at Techvision were everything I had hoped for and more. My marketing team consisted of 4 talented individuals: Rachel, a graphic design whiz; Marcus, our content specialist; Kayla, who handled social media; and Daniel, our data analyst. They welcomed me warmly and seemed eager to have fresh leadership. Robert and Michael gave me considerable creative freedom to develop the marketing strategy for their new product. When I presented my comprehensive plan, Robert actually stood up and applauded. "This is exactly what we need," he said. "Bold, innovative, customer-focused. I love it." We launched the campaign and the results exceeded projections. Sales increased by 25% in the first quarter following the launch, and our social media engagement metrics nearly doubled. At the quarterly company meeting, Robert publicly acknowledged my contribution, presenting me with an Innovation Champion Award. "Janine has brought fresh energy and exceptional strategy to our marketing efforts," he announced to the entire company. "This is exactly the kind of talent and drive that will take Techvision to the next level." I felt valued, respected, and part of something special. My team celebrated with me over happy hour drinks that evening, and I remember thinking I had finally found my professional home. The camaraderie and sense of shared purpose was unlike anything I had experienced before. Michael even stopped by our table briefly. "Great job, Janine," he said, raising his glass in a toast. "The investors were very impressed with the campaign metrics. Keep up the excellent work." In that moment, I knew I had made the right decision to join Techvision. The stability and satisfaction I felt gave me the confidence to make other significant life changes. I had been renting since moving to the city 7 years ago, but with my new position and salary, I finally felt secure enough to buy my own place. I found a charming 2-bedroom condo in a neighborhood I had always admired, but previously couldn't afford. The mortgage would be manageable with my Techvision salary, and I loved the idea of building equity rather than paying rent. I submitted an offer which was accepted and began the process of becoming a homeowner. Everything was falling into place perfectly. My parents visited from Ohio and were impressed not just with my new home, but with how happy I seemed in my new role. "You are glowing, honey," my mom said during their visit. "I've never seen you so passionate about your work." I was passionate indeed. I stayed late often, not because I had to, but because I was genuinely excited about the projects I was leading. I developed a mentorship relationship with several junior employees, and even started a weekly lunch and learn program where team members could share their expertise in different areas. Robert mentioned the possibility of expanding my role to include product development input as well as marketing. You have such a good sense of what resonates with customers, he said. We would value your perspective earlier in the development process. This was everything I had ever wanted in my career. Meaningful work recognition, growth opportunities, and a positive environment. I had found my professional home at Techvision, and I was excited for the future we would build together. Little did I know that the foundation I thought was so solid was about to show its first cracks. 18 months into my tenure at Techvision, subtle changes began to appear. At first they were so minor I barely noticed them. Robert, once a constant presence in the office who made a point of checking in with every department regularly, became increasingly scarce. His usual Thursday afternoon walkthrough became sporadic, then disappeared altogether. Around the office, whispers began circulating about closed-door meetings with potential investors. Lisa from reception mentioned that several serious-looking people in expensive suits had been in and out of the executive conference room over the past few weeks. Robert looked stressed after these meetings, she confided during a coffee break, nothing like his usual self. The first tangible change came when the monthly team-building events were suddenly canceled. These had been a cornerstone of company culture opportunities for cross-departmental socializing that genuinely strengthened working relationships. The email announcing the cancellation cited scheduling conflicts but promised they would resume soon. They never did. Next, the quality of the office snacks declined. It seems trivial, but the well-stocked kitchen with quality coffee, fresh fruit, and healthy snacks had been specifically mentioned as a perk during my interview. One Monday, we arrived to find generic brand coffee and bulk store crackers had replaced our previous options. When Marcus from my team jokingly asked about the downgrade during a department head meeting, Michael shifted uncomfortably before responding, "We are optimizing our expenditures across all departments. These small adjustments help us allocate resources more strategically." The birthday celebration budget was cut next. Previously, each employee's birthday had been acknowledged with a personalized cake and small gift card. Now birthdays were grouped monthly, with a single sheet cake for everyone born that month, and the gift cards were eliminated entirely. I began to notice Michael reviewing marketing expenses with increasing scrutiny. Reports that had previously been approved without question were now returned with multiple queries and requests for justification. During our weekly check-in, he asked me to find efficiencies in the marketing budget despite our demonstrable ROI. "The investors are looking closely at our balance sheet," he explained, not quite meeting my eyes. "We need every department to tighten up a bit." My concern deepened when I ran into Amanda from accounting one evening as we were both working late. She looked stressed, and when I asked if everything was okay, she hesitated before responding. "Between us," she said in a lowered voice, "the numbers are not looking great. Revenue is below projections for the second quarter in a row, and some of the major clients are slow to renew their contracts." This information troubled me, especially given that our marketing metrics were still strong. I decided to speak directly with Robert about my concerns, but scheduling a meeting with him had become surprisingly difficult. His assistant Mark kept citing external commitments and offering times weeks in the future. When the quarterly company meeting was postponed indefinitely without explanation, my uneasiness grew. These meetings had always been Robert's opportunity to maintain transparency about company performance and direction. Their absence left a vacuum that was quickly filled with speculation and worry. The most alarming incident came about a month later. I had stayed late to finish a presentation and was using the printer near the executive offices when an email accidentally printed along with my documents. It had been sent from Michael to Robert with the subject line "Restructuring Personnel Phase 1. Though I only glimpsed the content before realizing it wasn't mine, phrases like redundant positions and severance packages leaped off the page. I immediately returned the document to Michael's assistant without reading further, but the damage was done. A seed of doubt had been planted. Despite my team's excellent performance and the positive feedback I continued to receive from clients, something was clearly changing at Techvision. Still, I tried to remain optimistic. My team was delivering results and I had documented evidence of our success. Surely, even if there were financial challenges, the department's generating proven value would be preserved. I had built something special with my marketing team, and I was confident our contribution to the company was both visible and valuable. I focused on continuing to deliver excellence, assuming that performance would provide protection in uncertain times. My team and I worked harder than ever, determined to prove our worth beyond any doubt. I still believed in Techvision and wanted to be part of helping the company through whatever challenges it was facing. In retrospect, I should have paid more attention to my growing sense of unease. The signs were there, but I chose to see what I wanted to see, not what was actually happening. Sometimes loyalty can blind us to reality, especially when that reality threatens the security and sense of belonging we've worked so hard to build. 6 months after noticing the first troubling signs, I led my team through our most ambitious marketing campaign yet. We were launching Techvision's newest software suite aimed at expanding our market share in the mid-sized business sector. Despite the increasingly tense atmosphere at the company, my team performed brilliantly. We worked countless extra hours, refined our targeting strategy, and created content that perfectly highlighted the unique benefits of our product. The results exceeded even our optimistic projections, with a 30% increase in new client acquisitions and significant social media buzz. Industry publications picked up the story, giving Techvision valuable earned media coverage. I was exhausted but proud when I compiled the final campaign report. The metrics spoke for themselves. Our ROI was nearly double what we had achieved on previous launches, and customer feedback was overwhelmingly positive. I expected acknowledgement, perhaps even celebration, when I presented these results. Instead, I was called into a meeting with Michael and Sarah from Human Resources the following day. Sarah was new to the company, having joined only 2 months earlier. She was professional, but cold, with none of the warmth that had characterized Techvision's culture in the past. Michael barely looked at the report I had prepared. "These are good numbers, Janine," he said dismissively, "but we need to discuss optimizing your department structure." Sarah slid a document across the table. "We need to streamline operations across all departments," she explained in a detached tone. "We are asking you to evaluate your team and identify redundancies." Looking at the document, I realized they were asking me to eliminate 2 positions from my 5-person marketing team, the same team that had just delivered exceptional results. The request made no sense from a performance perspective. "I understand the need for efficiency," I said carefully, "but my team is already lean and each role is essential to our marketing strategy. Cutting positions would directly impact our ability to maintain current performance levels." Michael's expression hardened. "This isn't a negotiation, Janine. Every department is making sacrifices. We need your proposed cuts by the end of the week." I left the meeting feeling sick to my stomach. These people were not just my employees. They were talented professionals who had consistently delivered excellent work. More practically, each person handled specialized aspects of our marketing strategy that were crucial to our success. Rather than simply comply, I decided to make a data-driven case for maintaining my team intact. I spent the next 3 days creating a comprehensive report demonstrating the specific contribution of each team member, the increased workload we had taken on, and projections of how performance would suffer with a reduced team. When I presented this analysis to Michael, his response was chilling. "I appreciate the thoroughness, but the decision has been made at the executive level. If you are unwilling to identify the cuts yourself, we will do it for you." Following this confrontation, I noticed a distinct change in how I was treated. Meetings I would normally have been invited to took place without me. My input was solicited less frequently, and when offered, often dismissed or overlooked. Robert, who had once been my champion, was now virtually invisible, always in meetings or traveling. 2 weeks later, without any consultation, I discovered my team had been assigned to work on a minor website update, while a major product campaign had been outsourced to an external agency at considerably higher cost than what my team would have required. When I questioned this decision, Michael cited fresh perspective as the rationale. Increasingly concerned, I began paying closer attention to company communications and finance reports that crossed my desk. I noticed unusual expense patterns, executive retreats at luxury resorts categorized as strategic planning sessions, consulting fees to companies I couldn't find any information about online, and a significant increase in miscellaneous business expenses without detailed breakdowns. During this period, my team remained loyal and continued to perform excellently, even as they too sensed the shifting atmosphere. Rachel pulled me aside after a particularly tense department meeting. "Something's not right, Janine," she said. "The executives are acting like we are on a sinking ship. Should we be worried?" I reassured her as best I could, but privately my concerns were mounting. I began updating my resume and reconnecting with industry contacts, not actively job hunting yet, but preparing for the possibility. I also started documenting everything, all communication about team performance, the campaign results, the unusual financial patterns I had observed, and the increasingly hostile treatment I was receiving. Little did I know that these records would soon become invaluable, or that the situation was about to take a dramatic turn for the worse. The groundwork was being laid for a confrontation that would test not just my professional resilience but my personal integrity as well. The day everything fell apart was a rainy Friday in April. I had just finished a productive morning meeting with a potential client when Lisa from reception messaged me. Sarah from HR wants to see you in the small conference room at 3 p.m. Michael will be there too. The timing immediately struck me as suspicious. Friday afternoon meetings, especially unscheduled ones with HR, rarely bring good news. Still, I tried to remain optimistic as I reviewed my recent work and performance metrics, all of which were strong. At precisely 3 o'clock, I knocked on the conference room door. Inside, Sarah sat with a folder in front of her, her expression unreadable. Michael was beside her, looking uncomfortable but determined. Notably absent was Robert, who, as CEO, would typically be present for any significant personnel matters. Please have a seat, Janine. Sarah gestured to the chair across from them. This won't take long. Michael cleared his throat. Janine, after careful consideration of the company's direction and needs, we have decided to terminate your position effective immediately. The words hit me like a physical blow. Terminate. On what grounds? Our department has consistently exceeded targets even with reduced resources. Sarah slid a document across the table. This is your severance package. You will receive 4 weeks of pay, and your health insurance will continue until the end of next month. I left the paper untouched. I'd like to understand the performance issues that led to this decision. Michael shifted uncomfortably. It's not a matter of performance in the traditional sense. We are taking the marketing department in a different direction that requires a different skill set. What different direction? As department head, shouldn't I have been informed about this strategic shift? My mind was racing, trying to make sense of what was happening. The details are confidential at this stage, Sarah replied smoothly. But I can assure you this decision is final. We'll need your company laptop, phone, and access card before you leave today. I took a deep breath, trying to stay composed. I'd like to see my performance evaluations and any documentation regarding these alleged issues with my skill set. Sarah and Michael exchanged glances. There's no formal documentation to that effect, Sarah admitted. This is a strategic realignment, not a performance-based termination. Then I'd like to speak with Robert, I insisted, mentioning the CEO who had once been my biggest supporter. Robert is unavailable and fully supports this decision, Michael said firmly. Now we have arranged for your personal items to be packed up. George from security will escort you to collect them, and then to the exit. I glanced toward the door and noticed George, a security guard I had greeted cheerfully every morning for 3 years, standing awkwardly in the hallway, avoiding eye contact. Am I at least allowed to say goodbye to my team? I asked, thinking of Rachel, Marcus, Kayla, and Daniel, who had no idea what was happening. We think it's best if you leave directly, Sarah replied. We will communicate the change to your team appropriately. In a daze, I followed George to my desk, where a cardboard box held the few personal items that had decorated my workspace, a plant my team had given me on my last birthday, a framed photo of my parents, a coffee mug with our team slogan. 3 years of building something I believed in reduced to a single box. As George escorted me to the exit, we passed the marketing department. Through the glass partition, I could see my team working, completely unaware that I would not be returning. Rachel looked up and caught my eye, her expression shifting from confusion to concern as she noticed George beside me and the box in my arms. I gave her a small, sad smile before being ushered toward the elevator. I'm sorry about this, Janine, George murmured as we waited. For what it's worth, everyone thinks you did great work here. Outside, the rain had intensified, soaking me as I walked to my car, the cardboard box disintegrating in my arms. I sat in the parking lot for nearly an hour, too shocked to drive, trying to process what had just happened. That evening, still reeling from the events of the day, I opened my laptop to begin updating my resume when an email notification appeared. It was from Sarah in HR, sent to my personal email address. The subject line read, "Regarding today's transition." With trembling hands, I opened it, hoping perhaps for some explanation, or at least a more humane acknowledgement of my contributions. Instead, the message read, "Janine, I wanted to follow up regarding today's transition. While I understand this may feel sudden, I want to assure you that we are doing you a favor. This change will be better for your career in the long run, as the company is moving in a direction that would have limited your growth. I hope you will come to appreciate this opportunity for a fresh start. Please sign and return the attached severance agreement by Monday to ensure prompt processing of your final payment." The audacity of claiming my abrupt termination was a favor broke something inside me. Tears of anger and humiliation streamed down my face as I read and reread the message, each word like salt in an open wound. After 3 years of dedication, innovative campaigns, and measurable results, I deserved better than this dismissive, condescending treatment. I had lost not just a job but a community. I had believed in a future I had planned around, and a sense of professional identity I had carefully built. And now they had the nerve to frame my termination as something beneficial to me. As I sat alone in my condo, the same condo I had purchased based on the security I thought my position at Techvision provided, I cycled through grief, shock, and finally a simmering anger. This wasn't just unfair, it was wrong, and something needed to be done about it. Little did Sarah know her patronizing email would prove to be the catalyst for what came next, a turning point that would transform this story of betrayal into something else entirely. I barely slept that night, cycling between tears of humiliation and flashes of rage. By morning, however, the emotional fog began to clear, replaced by a steely determination. I refused to be treated this way, dismissed, as if my contributions meant nothing, and condescended to with that infuriating email claiming my termination was somehow a favor. My first step was research. I spent Saturday morning learning everything I could about employment law in our state. I discovered that while we were an at-will employment state, there were still protections against wrongful termination, particularly when company policies weren't followed. I pulled out my employee handbook and began taking detailed notes. Techvision had specific procedures for performance issues, written warnings, improvement plans, and documented review meetings, none of which had occurred in my case. The handbook also explicitly stated that terminations should be reviewed by a committee, including the department head and CEO, which clearly hadn't happened either. By mid-morning, I had compiled a list of potential policy violations related to my termination. Next, I needed expert advice. I called my friend Jessica, an employment attorney I had met through a professional networking group. Though it was the weekend, she agreed to meet me for coffee that afternoon. Jessica listened intently as I described the situation, occasionally stopping me to ask clarifying questions or request specific details about timing and wording. When I showed her Sarah's email calling my termination a favor, her eyebrows shot up. "This is extremely unusual and potentially very problematic for them," she said, reading the email again. "They've essentially admitted in writing that your termination wasn't performance-based, which contradicts standard business practices and possibly their own policies." "What should I do?" I asked. "First, gather evidence," Jessica advised. "Collect all positive performance reviews, commendations, successful campaign metrics, anything that demonstrates your value to the company. Also, document the timeline of events leading up to your termination, focusing on any irregular treatment or communication." I spent the remainder of the weekend compiling this information, retrieving emails from my personal account where I had occasionally forwarded work correspondence, and reconstructing campaign results from publicly available data. I also reached out to Amanda from accounting, who had been friendly during my time at Techvision. "I'm not surprised," she confided when I called her. "They've been doing similar things across departments, especially to people who ask too many questions about the financial decisions. Last month, they let go of Tom from product development right after he questioned some resource allocation choices. This information confirmed my suspicions that something systemic was happening at Techvision, not just a personal vendetta against me." Amanda promised to discreetly ask around about other terminations with similar patterns. By Monday morning, I had assembled a comprehensive file documenting my achievements at Techvision, the irregular termination process, and the concerning patterns emerging across departments. Jessica had reviewed everything and confirmed I had grounds for potential legal action. But before we go that route, she suggested let's try a strategic response that might resolve this more efficiently. Together, we crafted a reply to Sarah's email. It was professional, factual, and designed to put them on notice without explicitly threatening legal action yet. After several revisions, we finalized the message. Dear Sarah, thank you for your email regarding my termination from Techvision. I appreciate your clarification that my departure is not related to performance issues, but rather a strategic decision by the company. This aligns with my understanding given my consistently positive reviews and the recent marketing campaign that exceeded all targets by significant margins. For my records, I would like to confirm that this email serves as written acknowledgement that my termination was not performance-related. I have copied the State Labor Department on this correspondence as part of my standard exit documentation process. I look forward to discussing the severance terms in more detail as I believe they should reflect my 3 years of successful contribution to Techvision's growth. Regards, Janine. With Jessica's approval, I hit send, copying the State Labor Department's general email address, as well as attaching the entire email thread, including Sarah's doing you a favor message. Then I waited. The response came faster than I expected. Exactly 54 minutes after sending my email, my phone rang with Michael's number displayed on the screen. I put it on speaker so Jessica, who had stayed to provide support, could hear. Janine Michael's voice sounded strained, almost trembling. Why did I just get a call from someone at the State Labor Department asking about our termination procedures? I kept my tone measured and professional. Hello, Michael. I'm simply following proper protocols for an unexpected termination. As Sarah indicated in her email, this wasn't performance-related, so I wanted to ensure everything was properly documented. There's been a misunderstanding, he said quickly. Sarah's email was poorly worded. We should discuss this in person. Can you come to the office tomorrow? I don't think that would be appropriate given the circumstances, I replied. But I'm open to a phone conversation with both you and Robert present. There was a pause before Michael responded. Let me see what I can arrange. In the meantime, please don't communicate further with the Labor Department. There are sensitive company matters that don't need external scrutiny right now. After hanging up, Jessica and I exchanged looks. They're rattled, she observed. That's good. It means there's something they're worried about beyond just your situation. True to form, the next call came from Robert himself less than an hour later, the CEO who had been conspicuously absent during my termination. Janine, this is all a terrible misunderstanding, he began without preamble. Your contributions to Techvision have always been valued. There's been a communication breakdown that I deeply regret. I appreciate that, Robert, I said carefully. But I'm struggling to understand how a communication breakdown led to my escort from the building by security with no opportunity to speak to my team. He sighed heavily. Things were handled poorly, I admit. What can we do to make this right? I'd like to understand the real reason for my termination, given that it wasn't performance-related, as Sarah confirmed in writing. Robert hesitated before responding. We're undergoing some significant structural changes due to investor requirements. Certain positions were identified for elimination based on criteria from our financial advisors, not based on individual performance. Your role was unfortunately one of those affected. This admission was telling. So it was a financial decision disguised as a strategic one, and neither had anything to do with my actual work or value to the company. Essentially, yes, Robert admitted. Look, I'd like to discuss a more appropriate separation package and see if we can resolve this amicably. By late afternoon, Sarah had sent a new email apologizing for her poorly chosen words and offering an improved severance package of 3 months' salary contingent upon signing a non-disclosure agreement. I forwarded this to Jessica, who advised me to counter with my own terms. They're clearly concerned about what you know and what you might say. That gives you leverage. The negotiation continued over the next 2 days with increasingly favorable terms offered by Techvision. My confidence grew with each exchange, bolstered by additional information that trickled in from former colleagues who had reached out after hearing about my sudden departure. Rachel sent a text. They told us you resigned for personal reasons. No one believes it. What really happened? Marcus emailed. Just heard from Daniel that accounting is reviewing all our campaign expenses from the past year. Something strange is going on. These messages confirmed I wasn't alone in questioning the company's actions and that my termination might be part of a larger pattern of problematic behavior. The pieces were falling into place, forming a picture of a company in financial distress taking unethical shortcuts to appease investors. Armed with this knowledge and Jessica's expert guidance, I was ready to take my stand. The outcome would prove more significant than I could have imagined. The full impact of my strategic response became apparent the next morning. My phone rang at 7:30 am, displaying Michael's cell number rather than the office line he had previously used. Already, the shift in approach was telling. "Janine, we need to resolve this situation immediately," he said, his usual authoritative tone replaced by something approaching urgency. "The Labor Department has formally requested our termination records for the past 2 years. This is creating unnecessary complications for everyone involved." I remained calm. "I'm certainly open to resolution, Michael, but I need to understand what's really happening here. Several former colleagues have reached out with concerning information about company practices." His sharp intake of breath was audible. "Whatever you've heard is likely exaggerated or misunderstood. We should discuss this privately, not with government agencies involved." "I believe in transparency," I replied, echoing the value Robert had touted so proudly during my interview 3 years ago. "If everything is above board, there should be no concern about external review." After a tense silence, Michael's tone shifted to one I had never heard from him before, pleading. "Janine, be reasonable. We can make this very worth your while. The board has authorized me to offer 6 months' salary as severance with continued health benefits. All we need is your signature on the non-disclosure agreement and confirmation that you'll withdraw any complaints." 6 months' salary was substantial, especially given my current unemployment. For a moment, I considered accepting. But then I remembered Sarah's condescending email, the security escort from the building being denied even the dignity of saying goodbye to my team. Money couldn't erase that humiliation. "I'll need to review any offer with my attorney," I said, thankful for Jessica's guidance. "And I have concerns about signing an NDA given what I've learned about the company's practices." Michael's response was immediate and harsh. "You're making a serious mistake. This offer expires at noon today. After that, our legal team will respond to any allegations aggressively." The threat only strengthened my resolve. Then I look forward to receiving the written offer for review. The official offer arrived via email 45 minutes later, and I forwarded it immediately to Jessica. As promised, it included 6 months' salary, extended benefits, and a glowing reference letter. It also included one of the most comprehensive non-disclosure agreements Jessica said she had ever seen. "This NDA doesn't just prevent you from discussing your termination," she noted during our phone call. "It would stop you from mentioning anything negative about the company, its executives, or its business practices to anyone ever. It even includes a non-disparagement clause that would prevent you from truthfully describing your experience there." Together, we drafted a counter-offer: 1 year's salary as severance, a public acknowledgement that my termination was not performance-related, and a significantly narrower NDA that only covered proprietary business information, not my personal experience or treatment. We sent it at 11:30 am, 30 minutes before their deadline. Michael's response was a terse email at 11:45 am. "This is not acceptable." At 11:58 am, just 2 minutes before their supposed deadline, my phone rang again. This time it was Robert. "Janine," he began, sounding exhausted, "I've reviewed your counter-proposal. While we can't agree to all terms, I'm authorized to offer 9 months' salary and a modified NDA that excludes the non-disparagement provisions." "And the public acknowledgement that my termination wasn't performance-related?" I asked. "We can provide a letter stating that your work at Techvision met or exceeded all expectations, and that your departure was due to organizational restructuring, not performance issues." After confirming these details via email and having Jessica review the modified agreement, I accepted the offer. It wasn't about the money, though the extended severance would certainly help while I searched for a new position. It was about dignity and truth, about not allowing them to rewrite my professional history for their convenience. The fallout extended beyond just my situation. 2 days after finalizing my agreement, Rachel called to tell me that Sarah from HR had been placed on administrative leave. "The official line is that she's taking personal time," Rachel explained, "but security escorted her out yesterday afternoon, just like they did with you. And there are people from the Labor Department interviewing staff about termination practices." Over the next week, more former colleagues reached out with similar stories of abrupt dismissals, followed by pressure to sign restrictive NDAs. Many had accepted the initial terms out of fear or immediate financial need. Learning about my experience emboldened several to contact the Labor Department with their own accounts. Amanda from accounting called with perhaps the most significant update. "The CFO is under investigation," she whispered, as though someone might overhear our phone call. "Apparently, there are questions about financial reporting to investors and some questionable fund allocations. Your situation opened a much bigger can of worms than anyone expected." A month after my termination, I received an unexpected email from Teresa, a woman I didn't know who introduced herself as a former Techvision employee from before my time there. "I want to thank you for standing up to them," she wrote. "After reading about your experience in the Labor Department's inquiry, I've connected with 15 other former employees who were terminated under similar circumstances over the past 4 years. We're considering a class action regarding the pattern of terminations and coercive severance practices." The ripple effects continued to spread. Industry publications began reporting on the Labor Department's investigation of Techvision, causing their stock price to drop. Robert issued a public statement about addressing legacy HR practices and announced the hiring of a new chief people officer to reinforce our commitment to employee well-being. Perhaps the most satisfying moment came 3 months after my termination. I was at an industry conference representing my new consulting business when I spotted Michael across the room. Our eyes met briefly, and I saw recognition, then discomfort flash across his face before he abruptly changed direction to avoid passing my booth. Later that same day, I encountered Rachel and Marcus, who had both recently left Techvision for positions at a competing firm. Over drinks, they filled me in on the aftermath. "The company is in damage control mode," Marcus explained. "They've revised all the HR policies and increased severance packages across the board. The board brought in outside consultants to review everything." Rachel added, "Your name is basically forbidden in meetings now, but everyone knows what happened and that you were the one who stood up to them." What had begun as a personal injustice had catalyzed meaningful change, not just for me but for many others. By refusing to accept unfair treatment and finding the courage to push back, I had helped expose problematic practices that had affected dozens of employees over years. The experience had been painful and challenging, but it had also revealed strengths I hadn't known I possessed and opened unexpected doors to new opportunities. Sometimes the worst experiences can lead to the most significant growth if we're brave enough to face them with integrity and resolve. 6 months after that fateful email from HR, I find myself in a surprisingly different place, both professionally and personally. The initial shock and pain of my abrupt termination from Techvision has evolved into something I never expected: gratitude. The first weeks were undeniably brutal. Despite the favorable severance agreement, I struggled with feelings of failure and self-doubt. Had I missed warning signs? Could I have prevented the situation? The questions circled endlessly in my mind as I scrolled through job listings, wondering if future employers would somehow sense that I had been discarded by my previous company. My confidence, once so solid, felt shattered. I second-guessed decisions I would have made unhesitatingly before, from what to wear to networking events to how to describe my experience at Techvision in interviews. The psychological impact of being escorted from a building where you once felt valued should never be underestimated. My healing began with connection. Jessica, beyond providing legal guidance, became a friend who regularly checked in on my well-being. Former colleagues from Techvision reached out with support and job leads. My parents visited for 2 weeks, filling my refrigerator with home-cooked meals, and my evenings with reminiscences of challenges I had overcome in the past. Gradually, I started rebuilding. I joined a support group for professionals dealing with career transitions where I met Elena, who had experienced an almost identical situation at a different tech company 3 years earlier. Now, a successful independent consultant, she became my mentor, helping me reimagine my professional identity beyond traditional employment. Sometimes Elena told me during one of our weekly coffee meetings, the universe removes you from environments that are limiting your growth, even when you can't see the limitations yourself. Her words resonated deeply. Looking back with greater perspective, I could recognize that despite my success at Techvision, I had been operating within increasingly narrow constraints. The marketing strategies I was most proud of had been achieved despite growing restrictions, not because of supportive leadership. 3 months after my termination, inspired by Elena's example and encouraged by several former clients who had reached out upon hearing of my departure from Techvision, I established my own marketing consultancy. Starting small with just 2 clients, I focused on bringing the same creativity and results-oriented approach that had defined my work before, but now with complete autonomy over my methods and time. The Labor Department's investigation into Techvision continued, eventually resulting in a settlement that required the company to revise its termination practices, provide additional compensation to several former employees, implement new transparency policies regarding performance evaluation. Sarah never returned from her administrative leave, and Michael resigned 4 months after my departure, citing personal reasons in a terse company-wide email. In an ironic twist, Robert reached out to me recently, asking if my consultancy would consider taking on Techvision as a client under their new leadership team. "We're trying to rebuild our culture and reputation," he explained. "Your understanding of both our strengths and weaknesses would be invaluable." I politely declined, suggesting several other marketing professionals who might be suitable. Some bridges once burned should remain crossed. The most meaningful outcome of this experience has been the community that formed in its wake. What began as casual conversations with other former Techvision employees evolved into a formal support network for tech professionals experiencing workplace issues. Our monthly meetings now regularly attract 20 to 30 people, creating connections, sharing resources, and occasionally helping others stand up against unfair treatment. Last month, a young woman attended for the first time, tearfully describing a situation alarmingly similar to what I had experienced. Together, we helped her document the issues, connect with legal resources, and prepare for the difficult conversations ahead. When she emailed the group 2 weeks later to report a successful resolution, the sense of collective accomplishment was profound. Professionally, my consultancy has grown beyond my expectations. I now work with 7 clients, have 2 part-time associates, and for the first time in my career have the luxury of being selective about the projects I take on. My home office, with its large windows and absence of fluorescent lighting, has become my favorite workplace ever. Financially, despite initial anxiety about leaving the security of regular employment, I am earning more than I did at Techvision while working fewer hours. The severance package that once seemed like cold comfort now looks more like seed funding for a business that aligns perfectly with my values and strengths. The deepest lesson from this experience has been about the power of standing up for oneself even when it's frightening and uncertain. By refusing to accept disrespectful treatment and dismissive explanations, I not only secured a better outcome for myself but helped catalyze changes that benefited many others. I've also learned that our professional identities, while important, should never become the sole determinant of our self-worth. Being valued for your work is wonderful, but building a life rich in meaningful connections and diverse sources of fulfillment provides resilience when workplace recognition is withdrawn. Perhaps most importantly, I've discovered that sometimes what initially seems like the worst possible outcome can open doors to possibilities you never would have considered otherwise. Had I not been so unceremoniously pushed out of my comfort zone, I might never have found the courage to create this new path that brings me such satisfaction. Now, when I look back at Sarah's email claiming my termination was a favor, I can acknowledge a grain of truth in her patronizing words, though not in the way she intended. Being forced to rebuild, to reevaluate what I truly wanted from my professional life, and to discover my capacity for advocacy and entrepreneurship has indeed been valuable for my career and personal growth. Sometimes the greatest favor others can do for you is to show you that you deserve better than what they're offering. And sometimes the most powerful response to unfair treatment isn't just fighting for yourself, but creating ripples that help others find their voice too. Have you ever faced injustice or unfair treatment in your workplace? How did you respond? I would love to hear your stories in the comments. Also, if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe to my channel for more real-life experiences, and share this video with someone who might be struggling with workplace challenges. Remember, standing up for yourself isn't just about personal vindication. It's about creating spaces where everyone is treated with dignity and respect. Thank you for watching, and remember, your worth is never determined by how others treat you, but by how you choose to respond.